12th Street Sound is the name of the recording studio where I've made a lot of my recent music. Anthony Senarini is the man there. 12th Street Sound is located in New Westminster, just a short walk from where I live. You should get down there, meet him, record some music there, get some mixing done on your next project, or do a full production with Anthony. He'd love to work with you. He's looking forward to hearing from you. And as a listener of this show, he'll give you a great deal. So go to 12thstreet.ca/RCP to learn more about 12th Street Sound. That's 12thst.ca/RCP. Hello and welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernoff, and I have an exciting new episode for you today. I want to thank everybody who's been listening to the show. I've been announcing things about it on social media. If you don't know, I am going to put this show on hiatus at some point this year. I'll tell you more about that as I learn more. But until then, I am going to enjoy every episode like it's my last. So if you want to do that too, I've got an exciting new episode for you up next. Our guest today is a vocalist, keyboardist, and songwriter who released the project as only a visitor called Decay on February 24th, 2023, featuring Emma Postl on vocals, Celina Kurz also on vocals, Jeff Gammon on bass, Kevin Romain on drums, and herself on vocals and keys. It's available digitally and on CD, cassette, and vinyl via Mint Records right now. They played their release show pretty recently on March 3rd. So please welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast, Robyn Jacob.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out here. I'm really glad this worked. I know you've got a lot going on at home and outside the home, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, how are you feeling today?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's spring break, which it doesn't mean a lot to me, but because I also teach music to mostly school-age kids, I have a couple of weeks of less work, which is great, and also, I don't know, it's nice to be working. So it's kind of like, oh, what do I do with this little bit of extra time?
Yeah. So is your teaching, is it a lessons teaching type of thing, or is it more of a classroom type of thing?
Yeah, I'd say like an after school one-on-one kind of, mostly piano.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've always done a lot of, is teaching piano or perhaps vocals as well?
Yeah. I did teach voice for a very short time, and then I stopped teaching voice because I'm not technically trained. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't giving anyone like bad habits. But yeah, I've been teaching piano since I was like 15.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So you do have that's where you have the heftiest amount of training in terms of your own.
For sure.
background.
Yeah, for sure. I've been playing piano since I was a little kid, and then I did a degree in music at UBC and like in a general studies program, but with a focus on piano. And for a lot of years, with only a visitor too, I was sort of funding a lot of my activities with teaching money.
Right. Yeah. Pretty common arrangement.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different sides of the music school experience, and it's a very common topic. It's a chestnut of this show for sure, to hear other people's kind of reactions to participating in a program like that. And there's tough things, right? And there's things that you look back on that are less than ideal. But then, there's good things that you get out of it too, of course, that we all have made friends there and things like that. So for UBC, specifically for you, I guess, because that's an interesting one. I don't have too many UBC music people on. I've had obviously a lot of CAP people on, maybe some VCC now as well, and people from other parts of the country, et cetera, right? But like, thinking back to when you were at UBC, like what were some of the best things that you feel like you got out of it if you look back on it now?
Yeah, it's a lot, actually. I have a lot of opinions on my time at UBC. I went into school there straight out of high school, which I don't really regret, but I mean, I was really young and I didn't really have a lot of experience. And I think going to post-secondary with such limited experience really shapes how you go through the school. Because now that I have all of this experience since I graduated, if I were to go back to school now, I would have approached it in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I didn't even really know what I liked. Like, I
does?
can't even imagine knowing, like, not knowing what I liked. It was just so weird thinking about that now, because now I'm like so passionate about specific things. So, there were challenges to do with that, and I think also with the conservatory format, and in a lot of ways I think UBC has a lot of growing up to do in terms of the culture. But I had a lot of really amazing experiences there too, and I think working with the Gammon ensemble and Michael Tenzer, who's still teaching there, that was really influential for me. Working with a few of the professors in the composition department was really great. But also getting involved with the radio station. That really changed everything, because it was only through that I really found a connection to the music community in Vancouver. It wasn't so much through the school, which seems really weird to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a link to the real world, right? I mean, the school can try and do that, but it's never going to be great at it compared to other things, because it's just not designed to do that, right?
Which seems very strange.
Yeah.
It's like, why is it there if it's not there to... Well, okay, maybe it's also there's like different silos within the music community in town, right? So there's like the orchestral, classical gamut, and then there's sort of like the new music folks, and then there's the kind of jazz improv creative, what they call creative music side, and then there's like the DIY. There's so many different, I feel like they don't often speak to each other, so I think maybe that was part of it. But yeah, so it was only through the radio station that I was like meeting musicians that were, that are seen all over town, and then I was able to sort of make some connections through that.
Yeah. Because you have to have an excuse to feel comfortable to speak to some of these people for the first time, right? Because it's like, it's the thing that I can't remember who built this analogy for me, but I've liked to think of it this way since. It's like if there's a neighborhood cafe or something, whether it's a Starbucks or an actual independent cafe, if you just go there for the first time, you just pop in there once because you can just stop and get a coffee. Like, there's going to be people there probably who go there all the time, but you're not going to know who they are, and you're not going to have any reason to talk to them, right? But if you go there 10 times, then it's like at some point you're going to notice something, right? Like, you're going to see who the other people are who have also been there 10 times, and then maybe that's enough of an excuse that you can talk to people. And we probably feel that's one of the great things at like any music gig, right? Like, no matter what genre you play, if you go to a lot of gigs in a community, you'll see some of the same people, and then you'll become friends, right? Like, it's just kind of, it breeds that, right? So that's like a tough thing to get a sense of what's going on in the city in the real world while you're at school, right? Because you get that with all the people who you're going to school with, but you don't with everybody else, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think having this excuse of having a radio show was like, hey, now I can, people that you admire or whatever, they're on stage and you're like this little nerdy kid in the audience and you're like, oh my gosh, I can actually say hi because I can be like, come talk on my radio show. Like, I think that was a big one for me. So, yeah.
Well, this is very meta, right? Because I've heard Only Visitor play live 3 or 4 times. I've never met you, and you came out here, and now we're meeting for the first time because of something that's exactly the same sort of circumstances, right? So proven true right now. QED done.
Totally.
So how was your show on March 3rd? I couldn't be there. How'd it go?
It was awesome. Yeah, actually the energy was really great. It was like, it really warmed my heart. I think Troll Dolly opened the night with a full band, and her project is just so gorgeous. Like I was telling someone earlier, I think I could listen to the fade in on her record like over and over again. It's so well produced, and the songwriting is really interesting. And then Buddie played, and Buddie, that set just brought me back to playing in my high school band, the Tangerines, which was my friend's band. At like the youth center in high school. Nice. And all these things. It was just like, so, I don't know. It had this like really nostalgic vibe. And yeah, it was great. It's nice to play at like a DIY venue. The sound was really good. It just felt like, all your buds are there. It's great. It was really nice. Yeah. And we don't play very often because it's kind of just like hard to get together. Everyone's so busy. So yeah, it was really was like a little party.
Is everybody even local to Metro Vancouver anymore among the group of five
now
of you?
they are.
Oh,
now
they are. Okay,
yeah. There was a time where Celina and Emma both lived on Vancouver Island. And so whenever we got together to play, it would have to be worth it. Like it had to be, and even now, like we can't just play like every few weeks because it's just everyone's so busy. And it's like, it's actually quite hard to even just schedule rehearsal.
Yeah, no kidding.
So we kind of made up this thing at our show, which was like our encore, which I have opinions about encores. And that's sort of an aside, but I think they're dumb. Anyway, sometimes we do encores. And I think this tradition that's sort of slowly shaping together is that we play something we just didn't rehearse.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of fun, keeps us on our toes.
So I heard you at Ironworks in 2022. Did you do that there?
Probably. We may have played whatever we played in encore. We may have practiced it, but even that show, like we hadn't played together for probably, months, like 4 months plus, and we rehearsed once.
Like you hadn't played together in 4 months at all, including rehearsals. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we just rehearsed one time. I'm pretty sure we just did one rehearsal before that show. I managed to sneak in 2 rehearsals before our album release, but yeah, it's really hard to get together.
Yeah. What's the magic number where it gets hard? I mean, 4, a lot of people do 4. Is it 5? Is it right where you are? Once you get to 5 people at 5 plus, then it gets hard?
Yeah, I would say I would guess something like that. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with like a trio or anything. I play in a duo with Elisa Thorne, who's a harp player.
The Giving Shapes.
Yeah, and so that's easy. We're both busy, but with similar schedules. We both have, similar careers. So like, we're like mostly free during the day because we teach music after school. Like it's very similar. Whereas like in Only a Visitor, one of our members is a full-time nurse. And then Kevin and Jeff are often, they're gigging a lot too. So things book up. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely feel like I really admire people who have solo projects because I'm like, wow, you can do everything. Like you can just say yes to you can really do a lot when it's just you. It's way cheaper. But
like literally performing solo, not even just leading a band. Yeah.
And I'm just mostly very uninterested in playing solo. Although I recently did a little bit of music playing piano, like a real piano, and just singing at a Vancouver Music on Main winter solstice show. And I was thinking like, oh, this is actually really fun in this particular setting. But yeah, mostly I just would rather not play solo.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough. I certainly, if you play something like bass or drums, you don't even have to entertain the question because it's just not going to happen, right? But if you're a pianist and a vocalist, it'll come up because there's a lot of people like that who play solo and do it really well, right? So you got to make a choice.
Yeah. Although I think, the reason why I don't like playing solo is because I actually don't really love demanding everyone's attention all the time.
Like specifically towards yourself as opposed to the ensemble of music and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And then like, because Only a Visitor is really so much about playing live together, like a lot of our energy comes from the interplay between the musicians. I feel like that makes it a lot easier. It just makes it different and more fun in a different way. Yeah, it's like all about ensemble and live music rather than like listen to what I think about life or whatever. I don't know. It seems like different. It's different.
And you're presenting a unique lineup with Only a Visitor, of course, too, right? Because the whole thing about the 3 vocals and the piano trio kind of rhythm section and how the vocals really drive every arrangement, and there's so much vocal harmony, and it's that really distinctive sound, right? So it seems like you've really crafted that in a way that accomplishes this thing of not putting the spotlight too much on yourself, even though you wrote every song and you have a really strong role at the foundation of it. It seems like you've really thought about that and you've delivered it that way,
Yeah, it's definitely very much like the band makeup is definitely a big part of the whole point of the band. Yeah.
Did it evolve into that very specific lineup from something else that you started with like 3 albums ago or 3 projects ago and several years, right? Like it's a long running ensemble now, but did did it come to you in this lineup and with this kind of 3-part thing being such a big factor in it?
Yeah, it slowly morphed into this. So I was playing solo for a while, and then
darn, we were just talking about.
Yeah, I know. And I was just like, why is this? I don't know. I think I started becoming very interested in a cappella vocal stuff in general. And so I tried putting together a vocal quartet, and which was, very much like, it was just Only a Visitor, but a cappella and maybe weirder and very shaky and not very good.
So was it the same 3 of you plus somebody else? If it was 4
people? It was
people?
A bunch of friends, kind of different people. Yeah. And yeah, we were practicing for a while, and it was hard. And eventually I think, do you know Winston Minkler?
Oh yeah.
So I don't know when this happened, but I remember emailing Winston and was like, I'm looking for vocalists. Like, do you know any? And Winston was like, oh, I know Emma. And so I emailed Emma Postl, and I just was like, do you want to be part of this project? Like, it would be fun, and we probably won't make any money, but like we could probably get pizza after from like whatever we make from the show. And Emma was like, I also know Celina. Celina might be interested in this. And then Sarah Kim for a while was also involved. And then my friend Lindy Gray was also involved for a while. We at one point, we had 4 vocalists for a while.
Wow.
And then through all those folks, met Jeff. I knew Kevin already through other bands' stuff. And so that's sort of how it came about.
Yeah, okay, so it really did have that sound from the beginning. It's not like you added other vocals to complete something after you already started with like 3 or 4 people. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, voice was central from the beginning, I would say. And I thought about it as like replacing the guitars with voice for a long time. And then now I'm like, oh yeah, I used to say that all the time. And now I'm like, I just write for voice, or like write songs and then I arrange for voices. So yeah, and try to do like interesting things with the arrangements.
Yeah, because there's so many different kind of background vocal things that you drop from song to song. And it doesn't matter whether it's like a more ballad song or something that's more stripped down or slower or both. I mean, you're filling those with harmonies all across your album on the slower tracks, right? Like one of my favorite tracks is I Am at Ease, right? Like that was one of the ones that I felt had the biggest impact on me both live and on the album, right? So I mean, that of the slower songs, there's so much harmony in there too. But on the faster ones, there is as well. They just do different things, and there's more rhythm involved, right?
Yeah, I think it's like the new record especially has a lot more slower, meditative feel on it, and which it's not really, it's not what we usually do. Usually, it's like very energetic, and so I found even some of the newer songs kind of harder to perform because it's such a different pocket to sit in. But that song actually that you mentioned is about the MK Ultra experiments.
I remember you mentioning that on stage at Ironworks.
Yeah, and I actually mentioned it at this concert that I did where I sang that one without the band, actually. I kind of rearranged it for a few other musicians just for this one concert. And someone came up to me after the show and was like, this song, I'm like one of those people. And she was so moved. And she basically said like her whole life, she felt like no one really believed that was even a real thing that happened. So,
wow.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that must feel like. So, yeah, I was like, whoa.
What do you even say to that person at that time?
I don't know. She was kind of just like felt really moved that someone would acknowledge the story and try to relate through art and
like try to understand it. Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like I guess that's sort of what I mean, just that whole concept is so absurd and just outrageous. And yeah, but I never expected to like meet somebody who was directly affected. So
yeah, you never know what's going to happen when you start putting stuff out there. When it reaches the person who's listening, you get to meet somebody and it's like you're going to the cafe for the 10th time. You skip everything if you make honest music and you present it in certain contexts and stuff. You just have a direct line to those people, right? And they feel like they want to come up to you and say that instead of being too shy to do it, right? Because you gave them something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's really rewarding. It makes it feel like, because the whole point is that there's a couple things at play. Like, I make whatever I make because I need to. Otherwise I would, like, I don't know. It's just this, like, it's almost like a something that I just have to do. And then I hope that I can, like, release it and give it to somebody to, like, who's open to receive it and also needs to receive it, you know? And so it's really rewarding when that happens, because then it's like, oh, okay, good, it's working. It's like not just like me, you know? Like, that's not what I want.
Yeah. People actually need a lot of kind of feedback and reinforcement that things are working, right? Maybe more than you'd expect, because it doesn't just come automatically. It comes from, like, the special occasions, right? So we'll go with, like, long periods of time where maybe we don't have as much of that as you like, right?
Yeah, and it's sort of always, there's this, like, what is the point kind of thing, because the music industry is, like, so disgusting, so broken. And in some ways, I was actually chatting with Buddie and Troll Dolly, who played the release show with me. I was talking to them about this. Is like how do you even do it without having some level of privilege, right? Like for example, putting on our release show, we had a really good turnout, and it was, like, super fun. And at the end of the day, and, like, you know, the venue is not, like, an expensive venue, and they're not, like, ripping us off or anything. They're great. But still, at the end of the day, like, every band made, like, $100 and some dollars. Like, and it's like, how are you even...
Every band?
Yeah. Like,
not every
once
musician.
We split it all. No. Once we split it all up, right? And it's just kind of like, it's like, okay, so how are you doing this? Like, how are you... I was just asking them, like, how do you guys pay your bands? You know, because...
You were asking the people at the venue?
I was asking the other bands that played the show.
Right.
I was just like, you know, after the show, like, yeah, that was fun. It was a nice time. But also just like, so where are you guys at with paying your bands, right? Because like I said earlier, when I started Only a Visitor, it was like, we're not going to make any money. We'll get pizza after. Like, that's sort of the idea.
And they bought in on that because they're your friends.
and because it was fun. And, you know, and at that point we were quite young compared to now. And so, you know, because this is like 2015 when our first album together came out, and so, but now, you know, that's not, I always pay them like a couple $100 a gig, because it wouldn't be sustainable otherwise this many years down the line. And, like, you know, we should all be able to...
Oh, okay. Like, so thank you. Now I see what the interest specifically of your discussion was with, like, the other band leaders or the leaders of the ensemble. You're coming at it, and if I get it right, what I understand from what you're saying is, like, you are interested to know for them, like, you've made this decision to try and do the best, do right by your band members in the best way you know how, and you were wondering what they had thought about in terms of that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, where are they at? How are they pulling it off, right? Because it's like, for example, Troll Dolly plays a lot of shows, and I know, like, a couple people that play in her band, you know, they're really good musicians and they gig all the time. So I'm just like, so how do you work that out? And basically it's like, yeah, the band leaders often sort of just, like, go out of their own pocket to, like, make sure their bandmates are okay. And then, you know, Buddie was saying, like, yeah, we're all just, like, we all pool our, like, it's a group project, we pool everything together. And, like, it's maybe a little different because Only a Visitor is, like, very much my project. It's like, it's not like, you know, it's not like collectively led, for example. But anyway, I was just thinking, you know, you have to be so privileged to, like, have a project like that in a lot of ways. So it really makes me think a lot about that. I don't know where I started.
Because you have to have, like, some way to get access to the people to have them to buy in with you on it, whether it was you being friends when you were young or you doing right by them, even if you're losing money. Like,
exactly. You have to be able to do that. Yeah. And
I think able to do something.
It's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, Only a Visitor is not like the most successful project. Like it's like some people really like it, and
I
then,
really like it.
Yeah, I think it's good. And I'm happy with that. I feel like it's just like very satisfying, and that's sort of what drives it. But it's not like, yeah, I think we really depend on like festival gigs and stuff like that to like actually do anything. So right now we're trying to get festivals going for the summer and trying to do, see if we can do any touring or something. And it's like, yeah, it has to be so strategic.
Yeah. You didn't ask for any of them, but I've got a couple of examples from my own recent time that I could enter into the record on this same subject, just so it's not, if you would like it, and to not be just you. Yeah, I love the honesty that you're bringing here too, but if you're interested, I've got some relevant things that I thought of that have happened to me recently.
Yeah.
That I could relate. Yeah. So I guess first of all, in brief, I'm one of those disgusting industry people. I'm a label manager, right? Like this discussion, this topic does not go away. The further as in the non-commercial kind of music genres that we've spent our time in, like for me, it's jazz or folk, right? Mostly jazz. It doesn't matter how high up you go in that genre. This conversation is always there.
Well, actually, just to go off of what you're saying, we're working with Mint Records for this particular record, and they have been nothing but supportive, like so amazing. And so, that aside, it's almost just like the industry is broken, but it's not like, before there'd be like the label sharks, right? I feel like that's done. Like that's not really a thing anymore. Now it's just revenue sources. It's like, where are they and how do you access them?
Yeah.
And we all know with the issues with streaming and paying royalties or whatever, artists get no money from streaming really. And then having to like pay to get your track on like playlists or something. Like there's a whole weird thing that you can do. But I just feel like I feel like you can make money maybe on merch at shows if you're on the road all the time. But I was even talking to somebody who tours with like a bigger Canadian artist, like super popular artist. I just don't want to mention them because I don't know if this was like information given to me like in confidence, so I'm not gonna mention who it was. But a super successful tour, like big venues that are full, and still came out like losing money.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't go away. Like the further off you go, it's the same discussions, the same issues that people are sweating over. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like, how?
Yeah. I mean, and that the position of Mint Records or the label that I work for, etc. It is that the values in the merch, because that's why your album is available on 3 different physical formats, right? That they're selling through your Bandcamp and that they're selling on their own website, and they'll have their own bet that they're making about how they're going to put that out, right? And that's the kind of thing that I end up thinking about too. So that's got to be a piece of it, because you could do really well there if everything goes right, and then it's just like, well, how do we get the most chances to get the most out of that merch selling, right? So
yeah, and I kind of think about like, where's the least amount of risk in the whole industry ecosystem? Like if you like, who's never not getting paid? And I'm thinking like, I don't really know, but I feel like there are like sort of tangentially related things like, for example, if you like work the box office at the Vogue, like you get paid. You're never like gonna miss a paycheck from the Vogue. So like there's sort of like these supporting roles, right? But like the main product that's being sold is just like so precarious in terms of like how it all works. And anyway, UBI would be great. Like we can always just bring it back to UBI maybe. But
I played one gig in Nanaimo. I played about 6 gigs over the last couple months with my jazz trio, because I put out an album digitally in October. And this gig in Nanaimo, I lost a relatively large amount of money given everything else that was going on. But I don't regret it for a second, because I got to talking about making friends and having the excuse to talk to somebody, I got to make 2 new friends like that, just like nothing, out of nowhere, because we booked the show based on this other young singer from Nanaimo coming over here to play a gig. And I missed that gig, but we got in touch. And then I got interested in doing something in Nanaimo. And so she sang with our trio at the Vault in Nanaimo and brought a friend who played saxophone with us for fun. And so we ended up like doing a quintet gig featuring vocals basically out of nothing, like no rehearsal or anything, just sending over some sheet music and stuff. And it was so much fun. And when you think about it, like there's not much else that I would rather spend some money on than something like that, because who knows what that's going to lead to. And you don't get very many chances to just walk into something like that, right?
And like, that's another side of it, right? It makes it worth it, because it's like, okay, well, and this is sort of a backbone of Only a Visitor, is like, we do stuff when it's fun. Like, yeah. And it has to be fun, and it is so much fun when it is. So it is a privilege. Like, again, it brings it back to it being like a privilege to do all this stuff. Because it is like, yeah, if you can, you know, like I'm lucky enough to have my career pretty much fully based in music and music related things. And it's just like, I feel so lucky.
Yeah. Do you think about this stuff differently? Obviously, I'm sure you do, because of COVID alone and because of other things. But how much do you what do you feel differently about this subject than, like, I know you toured a bunch in 2019 with Only a Visitor. Like, if you think about then versus now, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we toured in the States in 2019. We got P2 visas, and like now, what are they going to charge? Like 3 times that amount? When you have to pay for 5 of them, plus union membership dues. And I feel like the musicians union is just not really, what is it? It doesn't really work.
You talk about the orchestral scene. It's like, that's what it's for, right?
It's kind of for that. Yeah. Or to advocate for people to get their P2. So I don't know if it really has to be, it's like a serious investment now to go tour in the States. And I was just actually thinking about touring. I mean, I'm so glad that I had these experiences touring. Like, our first tour into the States was in 2017. And it was like house shows, DIY spaces, and, you know, similar to what you just described, you make relationships with other musicians where you're playing. And then, you know, when they come up here, you help them put on a show. It's just like this amazing community. I don't know about that now. Like, I think maybe I'm either just like super out of the loop, or that and a combination of there being like fewer DIY spaces and places to play that are kind of like that.
You're talking anywhere, right? Like, not
anywhere,
just here, but in some of these places you went. Yeah,
I think so. And I mean, these places come and go. That's the nature of it. And it's sort of like accelerated in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland. But so I think there's a lot of reasons why it's harder now. And other than the fact that we're all busy and have like jobs and need to get paid better in order to live, because it's so expensive. So I can't be like, hey, take 2.5 weeks off work for pizza money, right?
Because the other people, they need to be doing other things in that time.
Like they
that's the deal.
They have rent to pay and like whatever, and so it has to really be worth it. And so I'm just sort of feeling pretty dismal about touring. But also, I was looking at another artist that I really love, another Canadian artist. She posted her tour dates today, and I was looking at it, and it goes like Seattle, like all over America and Canada, and then Seattle skips Vancouver to Calgary and then back east. And I was just like, right, this sort of another thing about living out here. It's like, you know, we live in a big city, but we live out here. Like, we're very isolated. And it's really hard to tour from here. Like, you know, we go to Vancouver Island, play Nanaimo and Victoria, and that's like whatever, the ferry fee, and that's like not, you know, that easy to get to. And or we could, I don't know, where would you tour from here? You could do like interior BC.
When I was in my folk band, our favorite things to do were always up and down Vancouver Island, and there were more stops given our genre and the kind of people we knew, right? Like, we could play in Duncan and the Couch and Valley area in a couple of different places. We could play like further out in Souk or whatever once you get down to Victoria, and you can go up for a while. Like you can go all the way to the top. There's like the North Island concert series in Port Hardy or whatever, but there's like the Mid Island thing as well. So the up and down the island was good to us. Okanagan Shoe Swap was good to us. Further beyond that, it's only for festivals and stuff, really.
Yeah. And I just feel like it's not really the same as if you lived in Toronto and you could,
Absolutely, yeah, just because of population and city density
different.
And stuff, right? Like what is accessible to you with driving or is completely different.
And then it's just like, oh well, there's the border is just like a huge barrier, like we mentioned. So it just feels very isolated out here. So right now I'm trying to in outside of Only a Visitor, I'm trying to build more connections with musicians outside of BC, mostly in my work with composing, because I just need to like get part of my life out of here because it just feels very cagey. Without
thinking, I'm going to move. You're thinking of other things you can do.
I love living here.
Before you had to entertain that idea, which you may or may not want to, right?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I know traveling is another expense, like traveling for work and some stuff like that. But yeah, it's a balance.
Yeah, I'm sure 2017 versus 2019 versus now, very different sort of situations. Yeah, I remember because my band days were kind of 2016 to 2020, and I remember the change in that. I often have this kind of conversation now about how the whole band was built on Facebook ads, and especially in 2016, 17, we could show up to any venue that we could drive to, and we could be very confident that we could turn out 75 people at the venue because we knew how to use Facebook ads.
Oh, that's
great. And the venues didn't, right, at that time. And now, actually, I rope it in with gas too, because obviously the cost of gas has very visibly doubled during that time, right? But it's like the cost of gas has doubled, but also the cost of Facebook ads has much, much more than doubled. It would be like 4 or 5 times more expensive to drive the same number of clicks or impressions using the kind of social ads that we did. If you did them now versus when we did them in 2016, 17, they were affordable enough that they worked for our tour budgets and for us to still kind of profitably do that at any venue. Like we were very comfortable with it. And if we use the same tactics today, we wouldn't feel confident in it at all. And that makes sense. Like nowadays you can't expect to use the same tactics that you used 5 or 6 years ago, but definitely when I look back on it, that feels really different.
That's really interesting. I think it kind of makes me think a lot about how if you're a self-managed artist, like you have to do all this stuff. Like I don't know about marketing. I'm a composer, like I teach kids how to play music. Like marketing is just unfortunately what you need to also do.
Well, yeah.
But it's like this whole other tool bag. I think at some point I'm just like, oh my God, I'm just gonna stick to like doing stuff for fun, because if I could go real deep into that side of it, and then I would just like maybe ruin it for me.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, my whole career has been built on the fact that I just love that stuff. Like I have the sick gene that makes me love it. Like I get passionate about it. I get mad when it's not working, and I am ecstatic when it's working. And so I really have always just lived in that side of the equation, in the band that I co-founded, and when I do my own stuff, and in the jobs that I've had. Like I've always just leaned into the back end side of the music world, and I personally love it, and I know that not everybody does, and I guess in some ways I'm happy that not everybody does, because then I get to work with you, and then together we can do things like that. And there's lots of things that I don't love doing, and I like it when I get to work with people who like those things too.
See, that's brilliant. That's great. You just have to work off of your strengths, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so.
It's my passion. I don't know if it's my strength yet, but it's my passion.
Well, that's enough. I think that's really great. Like recently, a good friend asked me to do some, potentially do some arranging on their next record, and I was just like, that's what I want to do. Like I love playing on stage and I love doing all this other stuff, but it's nice to just like be like, yeah, that's what I like doing. I'm going to lean into that.
Yeah.
So it's good. Yeah. When you find something, you're like, oh, I'm into this. Like marketing feels kind of like you're like, it's like a little game too, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a problem that needs to be solved, right? And at the end of the day, like the outcome of it is so joyful. Like the outcome of it is you have a lot of people there who want to be there and you have great time with them. Like when I was in the band, I always said my favorite times were like before the show, intermission, after the show, right? You just go around and you work the room, right? I love that. And I was a shy kid. And I didn't know that I loved that until I was 22 and I got put in that situation for the first time. And I could feel my way through it, right? I had no idea that I was going to love that. It didn't draw me into being in a band or playing. But when I started doing it, I found out that that's what I loved.
That's so funny. I love that. That's really hilarious. I mean, yeah, that's the best person to have in the band.
Oh, well, I think the best person to have in the band. I don't know. You've toured with this band a fair bit, so I bet you know who. It could be one or more people, but my favorite person to have in the band. In my band, it was Ben playing drums. It's the funny guy, the person who keeps everybody happy and who keeps everybody from being at each other's throats. You know, that's my favorite person in the band.
There is a lot of emotional management. Yes, there was definitely, yeah. Well, you know, everyone's human.
Oh yeah, well, we're not going to blame anybody who causes. Like you're always going to have interactions between people who are. It's the nature of being in a band.
Exactly.
Like, it's nobody's fault. That's how it's always going to be. You can't avoid it.
It's a group project after all. But like you were saying earlier, like you really like Jeff Gammon. I think Jeff Gammon is like the rock in the band.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's always just so even keeled.
Yeah,
and saves the day in a lot of ways. Yeah, I always like recount moments where I'm like forget what I'm playing entirely, and I just like ask Jeff, he'll know.
Yeah, and I like how, I mean, yeah, he has that personality where he's so consistent and he's just such a dependable guy, right? But it is interesting how on Only a Visitor, like you get to hear him play stuff on the bass that's kind of more distinctive and that stands out more. And he gets a lot of airtime in the arrangements. Whereas most of the time I've just been used to hearing him plunk away on upright and playing with the Sojourners and stuff like that, right? Yeah. But then, yeah, because I remember like I got some reps in. I don't really teach much lessons now. I've taught some people who I know in my local community and stuff, like one-off little lessons I do on my own. I've never really like taught for lesson centers and stuff, but Jeff gave me reps subbing for him at Long and McQuaid North Van when he was teaching there because he was touring with the Sojourners a lot. So I remember coming in there and teaching his students. But at that time, I just remember him being like the solid upright bass player. But on Only a Visitor, that's where among, you know, all the projects that he does, that's one of them where you get to hear him do more adventurous bass playing, right?
Oh, that's really nice to hear that. Yeah, because I definitely do all the vocal arranging and the keyboard stuff, but I don't do. I used to write some bass parts, but yeah, I'm just sort of like, well, let's try out some stuff, and then so drums and bass, I don't. Certainly
Kevin, I could imagine you don't need to tell him what to do. He loves that. He loves figuring that out.
Yeah, for sure, and I wouldn't know anyway.
Yeah, no. So big props to Jeff. He's always been a huge inspiration for me. I've always been inspired by the people who are not like a generation or two older than me. Obviously I'm inspired by them, but like people who are 2 steps ahead of me and who will always be 2 steps ahead of me, those are the kind of people that have really kind of helped me get somewhere and figure out what I want to do, because they feel closer to me, right? And I can kind of see what they're doing and really get to understand a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I find I get a lot of inspiration from my peers who are just doing incredible work. Like even I just think there's just so much talent here in Vancouver. I'm so thankful when people stick around, you know?
Yeah. Or come back. I think about Eli Davidovich and Millie Hong, right? Like they're still coming back often, playing bass and drums in the Vancouver jazz community every year. And they were huge inspirations to me, being always two or three steps ahead of me. And they haven't been living here for a little bit, but they've been coming back often. So appreciate that.
Yeah, that's true. It's nice to see also them building relationships with other musicians in Montreal that I, know in different scenes. So it's like, oh, there is this, that's the thing. Like the community, if we were closer, like it would be so epic. Like if Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver were like much closer, it would just be incredible.
Like obviously not physically closer because we just can't, but you're talking about just socially.
Or even just physically closer, like so that there was a more ability for people to work together. It would be unreal.
Yeah. But I mean, because we can't move the earth, it's like if we could be socially closer, then
yeah,
that's something to really aim for, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big one.
So I don't really know how that's to be done. It's something that I enjoy thinking about because like I have a music website, right, that is hyper local. I only cover Canadian releases. Only. I'll never bother to accept something else because it's just not the kind of audience that I've got. Mm-hmm. It's not the one I'm serving right now, and it's not the one I'm going to try and grow. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm always covering Canadian releases. I know I'm always trying to do as much Vancouver specifically as possible. I'm always trying to do as much jazz as possible. So but then what do I pick that isn't in that is sympathetic to that and that helps out the people here by crossing them over into something else, and that the audience that I have will actually be helpful to those people, right? It's an equation that I always have to think about. So how do you cross the cities more? How do you get them to be socially closer? Well, maybe people who move from here to Toronto and Montreal, like Eli and Mealy, they're going to help us out just in the course of what they do. So there's that. But I mean, I wish I knew like who all the people were who were trying to do rhythm changes in Toronto or in Montreal. And like, if I was talking to them regularly and, if I found whoever was trying to do what I'm trying to do here, there, and then we cross that over, I think that would be really cool. I haven't really found those people yet. And the people who are more established than me, because I've only been at it for a couple of years, I just haven't crossed paths with them yet. So I hope I get to do that someday. I hope I get to cross over with kind of my media peers in the small indie media thing and who are in those other cities.
Yeah, I wonder if there are like conferences or things like that for the kind of events. Like I feel like there is like funding for relationship building in music across Canada, because I think this has been, acknowledged in some of the funding bodies that going from place to place is really hard.
It's such a classic issue, right? And that's why the jazz fests are a cartel, right? Like that's because that's the only way you're going to be able to bring people through Canada and let them play all the festivals. They have to run it that way.
Description. That's really funny.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
It could have a negative connotation. I don't really mean it as a negative connotation. I just don't know.
Well, but
it seems the most accurate word.
Yeah, you're either in it or you're not. And it's like the only really successful Canadian tour we did was because we got a few Jazz Fest gigs.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, now we can do this. Without that, I don't know. But yeah, and with the festivals, how they're going these days, it just seems like, that's a dying animal.
Yeah, or at least there's consolidation, right? Like there's a lot of people who try it, and even in pop, right? Like there's things like Squamish and Pemberton music festivals and Skookum festivals that have come and gone, right? So there's a lot of attempts, but
what is it just like too much overhead? And
well, I mean, it's a tough business for sure. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people who are trying to do festivals. It's a pretty desirable thing to try and run, like desirable enough that people can rope in volunteers to help them produce their festivals all the time, right? Like that's how the Vancouver Folk Fest, they had their controversy so far this year, and it looks like they're making some good progress. So whereas it looked like they were going to dissolve, they're trying to figure things out in their own way. But like for 45 years, the Vancouver Folk Music Festival didn't have pretty much any corporate sponsorship. Like that's unbelievable. If you compare that to, we have the Du Maurier Jazz Festival and it turns into the TD. There's always been like major corporate sponsors in the Jazz Festival, but the Folk Fest was so committed on a certain kind of vision of that they made it they made it almost to the finish line, like in the bad sense, like they almost crashed because they've been driving for 45 years without any corporate sponsorship. That's how desirable it is to like, there's never been a TD Vancouver Folk Music Festival. It's never been a corporation in that title, right? That was obviously a core value for them. So people have non-financial values that they're bringing to the table when they're putting up these festivals, and that's really important to them. And frankly, that just makes it harder, right? Like when chips are down, that makes it really hard. And then so I don't envy that. As somebody who's played at a decent number of festivals that I've been lucky enough to play at, I don't envy them at all. And I've been so happy with how well they've treated us. I know it must just be organized chaos behind the scenes, like so many things are. So I don't know what to say.
Yeah, a good healthy amount of chaos. I'm actually just learning that with our 7 and a bit month old is like, chaos. Chaos is just a state of being.
There's no pure demonstration of it than that, right?
Yeah, you just sort of deal with it.
Yeah.
Learn to let go. As a fairly neurotic person that I am, learn to let go. It's hard.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, and yeah, people talk about their albums like they're babies, but they have no idea, right?
There's a bit of struggle that goes into that. Yeah. I mean, it's equally, it's very fun. I'm not saying it's equally fun. I think
fun in different ways, right?
Different
in their own
yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole fascinating other. If we had a 2 or 3 hour podcast, I would want to hear all about what you've learned from there. And it's a more personal thing too, so we could save that one for another time. But we've talked about so many interesting things, like around the time we've spent in this music world, not just specifically about, you know, the music of your album, which I enjoy, like live and in person, and it's now this latest project is such a cool collection of what Only a Visitor does, and it's out there for everybody to find, right? I'm trying to think of what some of my other favorite tracks are now, trying to come back to that, because obviously I Am at Ease, we talked about how that's kind of a heavier one, right? I don't know, what would be some of my other favorite tracks? Fraud of Finery, I guess that was a single, right? Yeah that was a
pandemic song for sure.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fun making the music video for that with Justine Chambers, who's a local dance artist, and just like such a brilliant artist. And Joe Hirabayashi, who actually mixed.
He's like the kind of the producer, engineer kind of sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and like filmed 2 of our music videos. He's definitely worked a lot for Only a Visitor this cycle.
Yeah.
And he did actually do our Lines record too, like in 2017, that one. So yeah, I work with him a lot.
Maybe this is kind of a weird question, but like now that you've done 3 of them and you're talking about the challenges that we face kind of thing here, like, do you feel like there is an impetus to go and do a 4th album, or do you feel like there are alternative ways to go about it now? Like maybe, you know, you made this music video, you know what the experience of making a music video is like, of what touring is like, of maybe like releasing song by song. Like, do you think about that? Do you think about a potential 4th album, to the extent that you do think about it, as like a big kind of mountain to climb that might be kind of hard? Or like, how do you think about where to take it from here? If you like step outside of the box and you're like, well, if we don't just get ourselves to do the same old thing, or to do the way that we're used to, like, is there something else that we could do? What do you think about that?
That's like the $1 million question.
Totally.
I mean, actually, we do have an EP as well. So this is actually our hold on. We have Tower Temporary, Lines. Wait,
I guess that's the thing, is the Tower Temporaries, are you going to consider that an EP or an album? I guess I'm kind of calling it an album.
Oh, this is our 4th record, our 4th recording.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is but okay. To answer your question, though, actually, you know, I think before 2020, I was really excited about expanding on band on a stage. And so we did a bunch of collaborative projects. We did a show with Mind of a Snail, Shadow Puppetry Company. We did a project with the Kingsgate Choir. And it kind of culminated in Double Happiness, which ran in the fall. Which was a remount of a show that got locked down in 2020, which was inspired by some of the material that you see in the Technicolor Education record. So it became like a theatrical endeavor. Like it was not a musical, but it was like a performance piece, larger scale collaboration with my friend Nancy Tam. So that was sort of the answer to that question, was like, what do we do now? I want to do something different. And now I'm kind of like, I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the future of the band is. Like if I suddenly was like, oh, I'm super inspired to like write way more songs for Only a Visitor, then I would just continue and you know, try to find a creative way to work on it all. At this point, I'm sort of in this like post-release nebula where I'm just like, okay, you know, these songs are still fresh to the world, even though to me they're like over a year old, because we actually recorded them in 2021.
Yeah.
And so I'm still sort of just like thinking about that and touring this record. But in terms of what comes after, yeah, I'm always kind of thinking about and hunting for a way to do it differently.
Yeah. And what about Mint? Like, are they a partner in helping you do that? Like, do you think you'll continue working with them? Well, I mean, obviously that's up to you to decide, but like, did you come into this with the expectation that now you're going to work with them ongoing, or did you come together for this album?
I think we came together for this album, but I don't know. Well, I don't know how they're feeling in general. They have been so supportive, so I feel like I love working with them.
Yeah.
And I'd more than happily work with them going forward. And it's just really I feel so grateful to have them supporting this project. Like, we never did vinyl. Like, the fact that I was able to do vinyl because they made the vinyl was just like so amazing. So yeah, I'm not really sure. Like, I think the music will dictate what happens next. Like, what I decide to do musically will shape how the approach changes.
Yeah. To say nothing of now, within the past year, you've become a mother too, and so you got to figure all that out too, right? Like, I mean, of course you're not going to be in a rush to figure out what
family
comes. Of course
band.
You have to think. Of course you have to think about it.
Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, what will the next record be, arranging wise? Like, do I want to have, like, part of me is like, oh, it would be really cool to like write a whole bunch of songs as Only a Visitor for like more voices and like organ maybe, and like do like this sort of really weird kind of explosion of what Only a Visitor can be, or shrink it down and be like, well, all that I said about not playing solo is like out the window. Like, here's this like really stripped down like solo record. Like, the possibilities are endless.
Would you go full Bon Iver and just multi-track yourself, or like have that sound even if it's with your three singers?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, and I'm reminded of this every time I rehearse with the band, is like, yeah, this band is this band. Like,
of course.
These people are not replaceable. So it's just there's a lot of questions. I think, yeah, like I said, like whatever sort of comes out creatively will dictate what happens, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to sum it up. I have an off the wall kind of question. Thank you for like bringing a lot of like energy and opinion and passion to the table on this. That really hits me too. I appreciate all these things that you're talking about with this sort of thing. If this falls totally flat, I could even just junk it at the end of this episode. But I almost want to ask you about a particular person who had a big impact in the Vancouver jazz community. And I never got to meet or work with because I'm a little bit too young. Who's still with us, like in the living sense, to be clear, but like who's not in the position that she had such an impact in anymore. And a lot of your peers have stories about her and what was brought to the table there that I'm just trying to learn about one by one because I'm kind of coming in after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Who was Rainbow Robert?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess Rainbow Roberts used to run the Jazz Fest here. Such an amazing person. Just so stoked about really good music and so fun to hang out with at the show and after the show. Like just a lovely human. And very supportive. Like I was saying, how we had our most successful Canadian tour was like because we had these anchor festival gigs. It was really because Cole Schmidt and I met for coffee, and I just sort of picked his brain. Like, I was like, how do you make a sustainable project work? And he was like, it's all about relationships. Like, you just have to build relationships, and just like what you were saying about going to Nanaimo and like meeting people, and like you never know, right? You never know where it's going to lead. And I was like, cool, yeah, because like, you know, Only a Visitor, I'd like to take it somewhere, right? And so, and I think he just sort of, he worked at Postl he still does. So he mentioned it to Rainbow, like, and I think, you know how the jazz festival, the cartel, they sit down and they have their big Skype call about who they're going to book this year, right? So they were having some tech difficulties at this big meeting with all of them. And Rainbow sent one of our videos around, was like, here, in the meantime, why don't you just watch this video? Because it was the day after, like, I'd met for coffee with Cole and he just mentioned it to Rainbow. Like, it was all just all these little so-and-so mentioned this and like just offhanded kind of things. And then there you go. We have our festivals and we do this amazing tour. And it was just like, cause I met Cole for coffee and cause Rainbow was like stoked, you know? And like, that's like I feel like a really good example of how she, operated and was just like there to support everyone. And she wouldn't even just like, I'm just going to run the festival and then see you later. She's like partied with all the artists, you know, like it was great.
That's important, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really nice place to wrap because it brings together a bunch of the stuff that we discussed. So go listen to Only a Visitor. You better check that out. I enjoyed it. Robyn, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rhythm Changes podcast. If you enjoyed it, become a member for free today at rhythmchanges.ca. You'll get the free weekly article from me every Tuesday morning featuring great artist, event, or recording to enjoy and share. Become a member for free today at rhythmchanges.ca. Come join us. Thank you for listening once again, and I will catch you next time on the Rhythm Changes podcast.